meeting is being recorded.
Okay, thanks. So, can you tell me about your business a little bit?
I have a residential and commercial cleaning business.
Okay. How long you been doing that for?
29 years.
Wow, good for you. That's a long time. That's awesome.
Yes, thank you.
How have the last 2 years been for you? Been a roller coaster or best year ever? How things going?
A roller coaster a little bit. In the beginning of the pandemic, it was difficult. Lost, a lot of clients, just paused service.
Sure.
Lost 5. I think at that point I had maybe 13 employees.
Okay.
Not 100% sure, maybe 15. At any rate, lost 5 of them that didn't return, and some of them I just tried to keep on, as minimal hours, tried to fill up the day as best as I could.
Sure.
But it was definitely that the hours were cut back drastically.
Sure, of course. I understand that. So, because I'm gonna do an exercise with you too. How many employees do you think you had toward the end of 2020? Maybe 10?
Probably 13.
13, okay. And how about by the middle of 21? About the same? Okay.
Probably, yes.
How many of those are full-time, like 30 hours or more?
All of them.
Oh, they're all full-time, okay, all right.
Uh-huh.
And one
But
more
at
question.
that, do you mean now, or do you mean at that point in time?
I guess at that point. How many work in 30 hours, you think? Close to it?
Maybe 6.
That's okay.
Yeah.
The other one's maybe 15 hours, something like that.
Yes.
I'm just gonna do a little
But
exercise.
I will say that I
Yep.
will say this, Johnny, and I don't know if it matters or not, but at that point in time, my accountant suggested that she went over an average. She went back a year, and then say employee by the name of Sky, if she generally worked 40 hours or 35 to 40 hours, we did an average. And so then in the beginning of the pandemic, I think it went on for eight weeks, maybe it was a program maybe, but for 8 weeks, we, if they only really worked 9 hours, we went ahead and paid them for whatever their average was.
Okay, gotcha. All right. All right, excellent. I get that. Were you able to take advantage of
Okay.
PPP funding, by the way?
Yes,
2 rounds or just the first one?
both rounds.
Oh, good for you. And the second one still in progress or all forgiven?
It's still in progress, but
Second one's in
should be
progress.
all forgiven soon.
Okay.
I know they're in the process of it.
Sure, okay. Do you know much about this ERC before Sharon reached out to you?
I did not.
No, okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that. I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see if we can help you here. I'm doing this correctly. Do you see Jorns and Associates on your screen?
Yes.
You hear an echo or are we okay on sound wise? We good?
No, we're okay.
Okay, okay. So Jorns and Associates, they're a specialty CPA firm. They've grown to 160 CPAs and analysts and assistants. And what we're talking about today, ERC, is literally the only thing they do. So they lead the country in this. They've helped thousands of clients get billions in these refunds we're going to talk about. So they're entirely specialized. If you think of a doctor that went back to school for several years, and today they're like a pediatric heart surgeon, they're just working that specialty. That's how specialized these CPAs are. This is all they do. Okay? So a little history, Shelley, about this program is, if we go back in time to 2 years ago when the pandemic first hit, we went from an absolute booming economy. I mean, record low unemployment in every sector, and the stock market was crushing it, to almost a total shutdown overnight with the pandemic. So everybody was scared. 2 weeks to flatten the curve was obviously going to be a lot longer than that. So the government poured $2 trillion into the CARES Act as this, an attempt to save the country financially, basically. There's several strategies built into that one bill. Part of it was a stimulus money. If you remember, the employees all got a $1,200 check in the mail that month, just to get money flowing through the market. Unemployment, if the place you were working was not deemed essential, it was closed, long-term. You could extend those benefits. PPP was part of that. And honestly, that sounded too good to be true at first, right? A sizable loan, but you don't have to pay it back. I mean, that was unheard of before this thing, right? My mom always used to say that things sound too good to be true. They usually are. But that worked out. They forgave those debts. You lived through that yourself. But ironically, the largest part of the CARES Act is what we're talking about today, that's ERC. They had actually earmarked $1.2 trillion of it for this program. 9 months later, everything else had worked great. PPP, they drained that entire fund, stimulus worked, but this ERC bucket still had $1.2 trillion in it almost a year later, okay? What happened is they made the guidelines way too strict that nobody qualified, okay? So to the government, that's a massive failure trying to give away $1 trillion and not being able to. I have my own personal feelings because this is our tax money, this is freely giving away, but that's irrelevant because they have earmarked these funds. And so when the government earmarks a fund, you don't have a choice. You can't just change your mind and give it to infrastructure. This money has to go to the American employer. Okay, so after that, they passed the rescue plan and they attached some guidance in that, kind of snuck in an attachment to try to get other companies to help qualify for this. Didn't make a much of an impact, but it was really the appropriations bill after that that totally gutted this program, changing the amounts, the limits, the qualifications. So this program today is vastly different than it looked at its inception. So there's two parts to this exercise. There's a how much and a how to. I'm going to do the quick how much exercise with you, and then in 2 slides I'll go through the how to process. So the first time period in play, Shelley, is from March 13th to December 31st of 2020. That 9.5 month period, you as an employer are entitled to a 50% reimbursement of payroll that went out during that time period, but it maxes out at $5,000 per full-time equivalent. I'm going to use the number 10 for our exercise because you might have had 6 full-time, might have had 13, kind of approximates. This is just a sample anyways, not going to get exact on a 15-minute Zoom. But based on that, 10 employees at 5,000, you get a check for $50,000 for that, okay? Now, this is not PPP round 3 or an SBA loan. This one's not a loan at all. This is what Jordan's does is they amend your 941 quarterlies. They resubmit it on a 941X form, and this time put the appropriate tax credit on line 18. That triggers an overpayment, which results in a refund check made out to the company. Okay? Follow me so far on that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you talk about the amendment, if you had done your personal return and then it occurred to you, you never told your accountant that you had put solar panels on your house, you could tell them they could, amend or resubmit your return, put the solar panel credit on that, and that would result in a check in the mail because you're entitled to that. So not that you put solar panels on your house, but what you did do is you kept Americans employed during a very trying time in this country's history. That entitles you to this reimbursement. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
And this check is not a taxable event because it's a refund of an overpayment in the government's mind. Have you ever had an employee or heard of an employee have too much come out of their check on purpose just to get a bigger return in the spring? You heard people doing that?
Yes.
I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but regardless, when people get a refund check in the spring, that's not taxable because it's a refund of an overpayment. This is the same thing, just at the employer level. That makes sense?
Uh-huh.
Now, one thing I have to add, though, is we're talking about CPAs and analysts that eat, sleep, and breathe compliance. So we have to do one thing and make sure we don't what's called double dip. With the IRS, you got to make sure you don't double dip. If you think back to your first round of your PPP forgiveness, you had to demonstrate an 8-week period where you use those funds for things like payroll or utilities and mortgage, probably payroll, right? So that's part of our math equation. Doesn't make you ineligible, but we just have to carve out 8 weeks out of that 41 weeks. So let me get my calculator here. It's usually about 15% off of our number. So let's just talk it. I'm going to call it 42,000. Okay. But again, that's a check made out to the company. Follow me so far?
Yes.
Okay. Now I mentioned that after that, the appropriations bill came out and changed everything. One of the biggest changes was they redefined the word time period or filing period to mean a calendar quarter for 21, not a calendar year. So our next time period in play is January 1st to March 31st of 21, quarter 1 all by itself. April, May, and June, quarter 2 by itself, then quarter 3 and quarter 4. So 4 separate filings instead of once a year like in years past. right before they passed, like an hour before they passed the bill, they took back Q4, but that still left us 3 filing periods in 1 year. And then they raised the reimbursement from 50% of payroll to 70% of payroll. And they raised the reimbursement from 5,000 to 7,000 per employee per quarter. So now, I mean, with 3 quarters, up to $21,000 per employee. So by quarter, if it's the same number, if we use that 10 mark, 7,000 times 10 is obviously 70,000 for Q1, 70,000 for Q2, and a similar adjustment for the PPP round 2 forgiveness usually cuts one of our quarters in half. So the third quarter might be 35,000 instead of 70. But let me just add that up. 70,000 plus 35,000, and then plus the 42,000 from 2020, about 217,000. Okay. Again, this is going to be a refund check made out to the company. So you follow me on the numbers so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now again, today I had a half a day because I some scheduled appointments. So some days I have 15 or 20 of these, and I always ask people at the beginning, "What do you know about ERC?" I usually get 2 answers. I don't know much about it at all, or I looked into it or heard about it, but I'm pretty sure we don't qualify. It's usually for one of these reasons here. We were deemed essential, so we never had to shut down. I hear that a lot. Or we got PPP money, so I'm pretty sure you can't get both. Or we're not down in revenue enough, or we had a really good year in 21. We came roaring back, so we don't qualify. All of these things would have been disqualifying factors based on that original guidance of the CARES Act. But that's why there's still $1 trillion in that bucket a year later. Good news is none of these are now disqualifying factors based on that new guidance that's come out since then. They're still part of the math equation, like I mentioned, but they no longer disqualify. So instead, what Jordan's does is they demonstrate how this pandemic has affected you and your industry and your business, but regardless necessarily of the same revenue guidelines and profitability that they used before. So let me give you a couple examples. My sister-in-law has a restaurant here in New Hampshire, and this has been by far the best couple of years of her restaurant career, by far. Okay? But for a lot of this time, she was restricted. Pretty sure Maryland was the same, 50% capacity in the restaurant. Right? But what she did is she put tables and chairs out in the parking lot. We called it patio seating. That was a huge hit. You basically be able to make more doing that than she would have with a full dining room. And then you add curbside pickup takeout orders to that. That made her a small fortune. People that were afraid to go out to eat could call the restaurant ahead of time, designated parking area. They could hand you your order with a person with gloves and a mask and give it to you through your car window and go home and eat if you felt safer. That made her a small fortune. Okay, so even though she's way up in revenue, she got both rounds of PPP, but she still got $240,000 at ERC because she always obviously had to make adjustments. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And other things we can demonstrate in her industry, the price of red meat went up almost $2 a pound. Okay, she can absorb that for a while, but eventually she had to raise the price of the burgers and the tavern. Restaurants using disposable menus. Remember, at first we thought we could catch the virus by touching things. Before we knew it was aerosol. So that's a printing cost. A one-time use menu goes in the trash. It's a huge expense that she didn't have to use to incur. And if Uber Eats delivered that food, they took 30% of the whole register ticket. So again, significant factors, even though it's been the best years of her career. That makes sense?
Yes.
Now let's think about construction. Every phase, if you're a framer or a contractor today bidding a job, you have to be real careful because the price of lumber is way more than it was 2 years ago. And timing for materials takes so much longer to get materials that you do need. If you're like a gentleman just wired my house, he said I paid 2.5 times what I would have paid 2 years ago because copper wire is so expensive. He has to hoard it when he can get it. The door on our in-law suite, they said it was 11 weeks to order, and our couch is a 40-week back order. So it could be a year for the end piece of our couch. I mean, everything just takes so much longer. Okay? Other things. Now, people like you that are keeping this country clean, thankfully. But my hot tub dealer up here in New Hampshire, she couldn't get bleach because the rest of the country needed to disinfect the country. But so I couldn't get the bleach pucks from my hot tub in my pool. So she had to find a way to get it in a block format, break it up herself, repackage it, rebrand it. She actually made way more money doing that, but that's a qualifying factor because it's called a nominal change within a sector. Does that make sense? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Shelley, if you look at this screen here, this is a very small sampling. We actually have 200 pages of guidance like this if we need it. We don't usually need more than a page or two. But like in the last couple of days, I've done like a community college. I've done a bunch of dental offices, retail settings, manufacturing. Even in an office setting, think about those plexiglass dividers in between workstations and cash registers and sanitation stations and air filtration systems. Even protocol to wipe down surfaces more often than you used to disinfect it. That takes profitable minutes out of your activity during that work week to do that. So bottom line is this pandemic has really affected all of us, or just almost all of us. There's an occasional business we can't help. The first 600 Zooms we did though, 598 got refunds. I mean, that's amazing. But I had a company last week. They're proceeding in case we can help them, but I'm not real hopeful. Every one of their employees does online trading at home on a laptop. So there's zero interaction with customers. Nothing's changed for them in the last 2 years. They can do that in their underwear in their basement, just online trading, right? Nothing's really changed for that. But for the rest of us in the real world who have real life interaction with real customers and have to hire and fire and order supplies and materials, it's affected. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
This gentleman here, Seth in Ohio, has 2 car dealerships, and he allowed us to show this, by the way. I'm not showing you a check without permission, but he had a Kia dealership and a Hyundai dealership. The top one is a 60-employee Kia. I'll just show it because of the amount. It's not just 60 employees times 7,000 for the quarter. It's an exact number, 446,798 and even 89 cents to the penny. George works on a percentage. I'll get to that in 2 slides, but they're incentivized not just to round it off. They go down to all 6 of these quarters. So if you had an employee that worked for you for 6 weeks of quarter 1 last year, they're looking to drill down and get you reimbursed for 70% of any payroll that went out during this period. This code F941REF here. This is an amended 941 quarterly, which is ERC. Overpayment triggered a refund check. And this is the time period. This is their April, May, June. This is their middle check for Kia. This is the second quarter check for Hyundai. It's 130 employees, obviously larger. But they got 3 checks like that for each dealership, plus 5,000 ahead for 2020. They were north of $3.4 million. Pretty amazing. Now, ironically, his previous accountant thought he didn't qualify. Okay, Seth had reached out to the previous accountant and asked him to look into. He'd heard about ERC. Within minutes, he called him back and said, "No way, Seth, you made way too much money last year." Okay. What happened with Seth is he couldn't get new cars because the chips aren't available. Okay. But he didn't stop selling cars. He pivoted and selling used cars. There's actually a lot more markup in used cars, apparently. So he's actually like 40% ahead in revenue. But his CPA just looked at, you may make too much money, you don't qualify. All he did is what you or I could do. He Googled ERC tax credits, how do you qualify? What came up? Those first 2 pages of the CARES Act, 2 years ago. Nobody qualified. That's why there's still $1 trillion left in that a year later. You couldn't get PPP money and that, everything. He didn't do any of the digging into those appropriation bill pages and guidance, though. That's what Jordan's does. So I say it's kind of an example. It's kind of fun to use. Let's say, Shelley, you're at the dentist, right? And same dentist you use for years. You do all your cleanings. You're good about going twice a year. Your fillings if you need it. But one day he says, "Bad news, Shelley. This time you need a root canal." Right? He's not going to say, I hope he wouldn't say, "You know what? I've never done a root canal before, but I always wanted to try it. I have a book in my office. I'll be right back." He probably wouldn't be in the chair when we get back, right? Hopefully he's going to refer you to an oral surgeon and does nothing but root canals, so they're real good at it, right? That's what Jordan's is. They're not looking to become your new year-end accountant. They don't do that. All they do is root canals, or all they do is ERC, basically, if that makes sense. You still need your primary care physician, but they refer you to a specialist if something goes wrong. So these guys are just totally a specialist like that. That makes sense. But they didn't invent this, okay? Everything I'm showing you to this point, if you dig into that appropriations bill and all the daily guidance that still comes out from IRS.gov, they just became the experts at it and helping their clients. Actually, I want to go back. I just learned something Tuesday night. This gentleman, we used to file 1 quarter at a time for people. Now we do it all at once. But since this year, we're noticing a new line on this check because the government basically assumed everybody is going to qualify and they put this money aside. Your check is going to have a new line right here. We'll say plus 4% accrued interest retro to July 1st, 2021. Your money is all, we haven't processed it yet, but your money is already earning interest as of last July. Okay? I just learned that 2 days ago. Pretty amazing. So I can't guarantee, Shelley, they're going to qualify your business. I might bet you a steak dinner off the side because I'm pretty sure they can, but I can't say. I'm not a CPA. I'm a presenter for Jordan's. But once the CPA say, "Yep, we can help you," they do guarantee their numbers are accurate. Okay? They're not figuring this out. They're way past that. We've already helped thousands of clients get billions in these refunds. So they built an operating system that the IRS has approved, by the way. So to them, it's more or less plug and play. They take your historical payroll data, your 941s from these quarters, put it into their program, and it spits out exactly what you know you received in the mail as your refund check. And these two paragraphs are very important. They're not looking to become your new year-end account. They don't do that anymore. But for this project, they absolutely are your CPA. And that's a legal relationship of pay and preparer. So if you ever get audited, they guarantee this whole thing. They put their licenses on the line. They guarantee their compliance, how they qualified you, all their money. So they're not going to jeopardize you or their own firm. They're not going to qualify you unless they can. But if they do, they guarantee the whole project. So I got to move our faces down. Give me 1 second. So the way they operate is called the contingency fee. Their fee is 15%, whatever they can get for you in a refund probably this summer. Okay? Actually, if you went directly to Jordan's, their fee is actually 20%. But because of the volume coming through my agency and network of agents, we're giving them almost 200 new customers a week right now. Our clients enjoy the reduced fee of 15%. But with us, you pay that after you receive your check from the government. Our largest competitor charges half of that in advance. I don't even know how they get that. It's crazy. But with us, if you don't get a refund, you won't end up paying Jordan's a dime. They do collect a refundable $2,600 deposit at engagement to get their CPA started on your business, getting your case going. But if at any point in the process, they say, Shelley, I hate to say it, you're that 1 in 100 company we can't help, they will refund your deposit literally that day. Hardly ever happens. I think I had one last month out of hundreds of cases, but the person had all 1099s, no W-2s. I meant to ask you that, by the way. Yours are all W-2s, right?
Yes.
I gotcha. So that person, he didn't tell us that they were all not, he didn't go to the W-2 model until almost September of last year, just too late. But assuming we can help you and you get your check this summer, then you'll be invoiced from Jordan's. And on that invoice, it will say minus 2,600. They actually credit that deposit for it. It's not even additional. Okay. And like I mentioned, it's they guarantee their compliance because they do everything within that IRS approved system. Any questions for me so far, Shelley?
No.
The only thing I'm going to add here, it's really what I call a consideration. And it's because Sharon's the reason we're meeting today. Really doesn't have anything to do with Jordan's. It has nothing to do with the IRS, but it's a consideration that if we exceed your expectations and get you a couple $100,000 this summer, it's not taxable. I'm going to make a suggestion that maybe you give your employees a couple dollars a week for some cool benefits like dental and vision and life that she offers. Can't require that. It's really a plug for Sharon more than anything else. But we're all looking to attract and retain good employees. I will say that Seth at the car dealership, he gave his employees $10 a week for life insurance, and it did go over very, very well. Okay. Yeah, certainly not a requirement, just a suggestion, plug for Sharon there. But from here, I'm going to have the agency going to email you their engagement email. All the terms are spelled out on that. And on that email, there's going to be 2 links. The top link is called Hello Sign. It's a little window where you type your email address. It's basically a promise to pay their fee after you get your check and do the work. The bottom link on the same email is how you pay the deposit. It literally is add to cart, like buying something on Amazon. I say that because the last few weeks, a lot of people right after Zoom paid the deposit, but forgot to sign the top one. That kind of slows it down. But as soon as you sign it and do the deposit, that'll trigger one of their specialists to send you their questionnaire. It's a 3-page blue form, just a general overview of your cleaning company over the last couple of years. Then they get a hold of you, and you kind of together formulate a strategy how they're going to qualify you. Assuming they say, yep, Shelley, we can definitely help you. This is what they're going to need from you. The forgiveness details around your PPP documents. I know your second one's in process. It should be done soon. We will need that done before we hit submit on ours. We get the process started. And the historical payroll data and 941s regarding basically quarters 2, 3, and 4 for 20 and 1, 2, and 3 to 21. Do you use a paycheck company or do you do like QuickBooks in-house? How do you do your payroll?
I use an accountant.
You do
I have an accountant.
That should help get it readily available. We're going to assign a specialist to you as well. So you're not one of 1,000 people calling in. If you have a question, you have one point of contact, as you go through this process. This process is probably about a 3 or 4 week period. Depends how fast you get stuff over to them. They turn it around. That we can control. That's what we do day and night. This, though, we can't control. After we're done and send it in, it's going to be about 5 months before you get your check right now. These caseloads are piling up. People realize this money is available. And tax day was just like 2 weeks ago. So they're definitely backed up. You'll get notified of your approval and your amount long before that, but it's probably toward the end of summer before you actually get your check. But you will. And then you'll get your invoice from Jordan's, like I was saying. Yeah. And here's a couple of referrals. So can you tell what's the actual legal name of the company?
Clean It Is,
Is it Inc. or LLC or anything?
Inc.,
Okay,
yes.
so Clean It Is Incorporated, okay. And last name is Duelley, is that right?
Yes, sir.
What's the best return phone number for you if Joanne's had a question?
240
Yep.
427 8969.
8969, okay. And what's your best email to use for that engagement?
Clean It Is.
Okay.
229@gmail.com.
Gmail.com, okay. Well, excellent. Well, Shelley, I really appreciate your time today, and hopefully we can help you. Look forward to seeing what we can do for you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your time.
Excellent. All right, Sharon, thanks for connecting us. I appreciate that very much. And
Thank
pleasure to
you.
meet you. All right, awesome. You have a great day, everybody. Awesome.
Thank you.
You too. Thanks,
Keep
Shelley.
up.
Call me
Okay,
if you need anything.
So you should get that
Okay,
email
thank you.
probably today or tomorrow, something like that. The first email from Joyce. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.